And just kind of switching gears a little bit, Mr. Buchanan, part of your book addresses the crisis of Catholicism. And as you know, New Orleans has a large Catholic population. In our show 2 weeks ago, we had um, one of the lawyers on for EWTN Catholic Television, which has filed suit against Obama on the mandate.
Right?
And I'm wondering if, I'm just thinking that this possibly could be an issue because we've seen a lot of constitutional abuses under Obama and Bush before him. But this might be the issue that wakes the sleeping giant and causes the American people to wake up. What do you think about that? Hey, are you impressed with the recent invigoration of the Catholic Church in taking on Obama on the mandate? In particular, Cardinal Dolan seems to be a worthy opponent for Obama.
Yes, I am impressed. We've seen the Catholic Church, of course, has been riven by these scandals, the homosexual priests or the pedophile priests abusing altar boys and
Yep.
even children, and it's been appalling. And the Church has lost an enormous amount of moral authority. But you make an excellent point. We saw here, and some of us were pleasantly surprised and almost astounded to hear priests up there in the pulpit reading that the government of the United States is invading our sphere of the church and trying to impose upon us policies we believe are inherently immoral, and we've taught that way for decades, and we are not going to abide by this. We are going to fight it. And to see the cardinals stand up that way and the bishops stand up, I think was very heartening. So I agree with you. With some of these younger priests and bishops and others appear to have some real fight in them, but we've lost an enormous amount of terrain when we've reached the point that the federal government is reaching right into the Catholic Church and the Catholic institutions and telling them to, provide sterilizations and
Yeah.
abortifacients and birth control devices to the women and to the men they employ.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, actually, the suit filed on behalf of Mother Angelica was really a great lawsuit because it's drafted so that the average person can understand it. And they go through how it's not just that they're mandated to provide it, but they actually have to counsel people. Listen, we have abortifacients available for you. We have birth control available for you. Sterilization available for you. Now, you can imagine that ain't going to happen. So,
Right. It's not going to happen. But let me say this. I think we got to expand it now. My father, who had 9 children, was an enormously devout Catholic, and he was a young partner who eventually became the senior partner in an accounting firm, and a lot of the kids he hired were Catholic kids. And if someone, and that of course was not a per se Catholic institution, but he was a devout Catholic. And if the government told him he was going to have to provide these things, I think he would have engaged in outright civil disobedience. And I think that Catholics who believe the teachings of the Church, I think, have to resist this and just tell the government, no, we're not going to do it. We don't care what you're mandating. We're not going to do it. And I think this kind of resistance is what is really needed more than ever today. But we are late in the day, but I agree with you. It is very heartening.
yeah, I think it's a sign of, well, at least it's something that might wake people up.
Right?
And then moving on to more of the suicide of a superpower, which kind of follows nicely with Death of the West, which I thought was also a great book by you. You predict that basically that white people in America will no longer be the dominant race in America, correct?
Well, I predict, the date is given now. I think it's 2041, when there will be no racial or no racial majority in the American. We will all belong to minorities. And as I point out, this raises another question. I don't know of a country where this has occurred, where the country is not riven with racial and ethnic strife and in real danger of breaking apart. And I have a chapter in there that was titled Ethno-Nationalism, and I changed it to The Triumph of Tribalism, where I dealt with, there must be 30 or 40 countries where these issues of race and ethnicity are ripping societies and countries to pieces. And countries need something to hold them together. And we've already talked now, if you have a common culture and civilization and moral code and consensus, the way we did in 1960, when we had all these folks here from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe whose parents had come from 1890 to 1920, we had that culture and civilization which could made us one nation. We'd gone through all these experiences of depression and war and Cold War, and we all listened to the same radio and same TV shows and same movies and read the same books and studied the same history and literature and had one language, the English language. All of those things, I think, made us one nation. And now I think that we've thrown out that idea of the melting pot and embraced multiculturalism. At the same time, we're making America more multi-ethnic, multilingual, multiracial, multicultural. And I just wonder what's going to hold us together, because I don't think it's going to hold together.
And I suppose, in the mainstream press, that you can't say something like that without somebody accusing you of being a racist.
Well, what does those terms mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what they mean is, as I told someone today, I mean, racist, homophobe, bigot, all these things. What they mean is I'm a heretic. I don't believe in the new orthodoxy. I reject it and repudiate it, and they use these terms simply to silence and censor you because they don't want anyone challenging what they are about. And so that's why they use these things, to get people ostracized and driven off radio and TV and their microphones taken away from them.
Yeah. I mean,
what corrupt establishments have done that since time immemorial. They have different ways of doing it.
So we see that you've been, you've made your exit from MSNBC. The judge, Napolitano, has been kicked off of Fox. I wonder how long John Stossel has. And I don't know, can you share anything with us on why you believe you were removed from MSNBC?
Well, it was the book that was the initial thing that they went into shock about. But and they were really didn't want me on the air to discuss it. But as I wrote in that column I wrote, I was on Fox and Fox Business News and CNN and C-SPAN any number of times. We did 150 individual stations, and when you do Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity on radio and Mike Gallagher and these folks, you're talking about thousands of stations. And even NPR, Diane Rehm had me on, and I was been on other, and in All Things Considered, and apparently they were not damaged by having listened to Pat Buchanan. I've been around for a long time now. I graduated from the Columbia Journalism School 50 years ago and was writing editorials within a matter of weeks. And everybody seems to have survived hearing my views, and often. At one time, when we won 49 states for Nixon and 49 for Reagan, often these views were considered, many of them considered very mainstream, center-right, and more in the center of the country than many of the people who now presume to speak for the country.
Exactly.
Well, and what's interesting now is whether they are mainstream or center-right or whatever, they are undeniably true. It is undeniably true that we have gone from a culture where people had more in common, and we've progressed to a multicultural society. Now, that's undeniably true. You can draw your own conclusions on whether that's good or that's bad, but right. When you raise the issue that, and I can't think of any examples through history where a country has survived that long term, that's undeniably true. But MSNBC, with them, apparently truth is not a defense. Now,
well, They have. There's no doubt they have a point of view over there, and I'm out certainly not in the mainstream of MSNBC. There's no doubt about it. But you make a good point. Now, let me say, I'm talking about multiculturalism. I think is going to fail. Angela Merkel said it has utterly failed in Germany. Cameron has said, the Prime Minister, it has failed in Britain. Sarkozy says it has failed in France. What is wrong with me saying I think it's going to fail in the United States of America? Apparently that is verboten, and you are forbidden to hold that. Unless you say diversity is our strength, instead of saying, look, diversity, unless you rise above diversity to a ground of unity, of common unity, cultural unity, moral unity, patriotic unity, that diversity will rip you apart.
Well, apparently that might make you an enemy of the Republic, so look out, because we have an NDAA waiting for you. We have a detention camp.
I've been an enemy of the people a long time.
Yeah.